When we look at the figures for piracy attacks worldwide this year so far recorded, we've seen 188 attacks worldwide. Of those attacks, 38 of them have occurred in the Gulf of Guinea, and those are reported attacks. And what we see is quite interesting because out of the 38 attacks that have been reported in that region, 29 have been in the territorial waters of Nigeria. And then, as has been reported quite widely that the attacks are spreading within the region, it's spreading somewhat selectively. So we've seen that there's a number of attacks that move east towards Gabon, and then the attacks move further west. So, for example, we've seen 7 attacks in the coastal waters of Togo. And then the attacks seem to somewhat skip around Ghana and continue into Ivory Coast and onto Sierra Leone, where collectively there's been 5 attacks in both the territorial waters and within the region. So we look at that and we wonder why, what exactly is happening, and why is it that the attacks are somewhat selective in where they move to, despite, for example, Ghana's recent discoveries of oil and gas, which is one of the key attractions for piracy within that region, as opposed to in Somalia, off of the coast of Somalia in the Gulf of Aden, where the attacks are very much more focused on kidnapping. Ghana has made considerable efforts at a government level to deal with the issues of piracy and maritime crime. And one of the things they're doing is looking at piracy both onshore as well as offshore. The permanent representative to the IMO, Ghana permanent representative, Dimilat Mahama, said recently that Ghana's taken a firm stance against corruption at a government level. And that is something that's quite significant, specifically in Ghana. They've put particular focus on government representation, coastal guards, surveillance has been stepped up very heavily in the region. And there's also a number of joint task force operations between Ghana and the US. So, for example, earlier this year, there was a trade information center set up in Ghana as a trial to see how it would work in terms of an information sharing center for the whole region. And now, in 2014, it's been decided that in Accra, a permanent surveillance centre will be set up, which is quite similar to the centre which will be set up in Cameroon following the heads of states meeting in Yaoundé earlier this year in the summer in June, where the heads of states of the ECOWAS nations met to work out a collective memorandum of how they would deal with the matters of maritime crime and piracy. Although what we say is that surveillance and information sharing is only half of the problem. The other half is having a strong naval capability, which clearly Nigeria has got, but unfortunately due to the sheer volume and numbers, they're not able to deal with all of the crime that happens within their territorial waters. Also, there's a huge issue of underreporting. The key here, as mentioned briefly before, lies within the governments, but it's not just individual governments dealing with the crime on their own. Because within the Gulf of Guinea, each of the territorial nations have their own laws that govern that particular area of water, it means that if a crime is happening in the territorial waters, say, of Gabon, and there are laws in place to deal with it, the crime can easily move further west into another territorial nation's waters. And so it's really about the governments coming together to establish a unanimous legal framework for the whole region, which is what was part of the discussions that took place in Cameroon with the heads of states of the ECOWAS countries early this year to establish a legal framework that would work for the whole of the region. Also, we believe that it's important for the governments, the African governments, and that's not just within the Gulf of Guinea, to recognize the importance of maritime as an industry to developing the state's stability, to developing the state's economy, and providing jobs, job creation, and wealth for the masses. Because if they can establish that, there will be far greater development of that country and distribution of wealth, recognizing that poverty is one of the key issues and key reasons why piracy exists.